So as we sit in meditation, again, we're not trying to stop thoughts. As Mingyur Rinpoche would say, if there are thoughts, that's good. If there are no thoughts, that's good. But either way, just remain in awareness. Just simply see thoughts come and go as they will. And if there are no thoughts, just rest in stillness for as long as it lasts. Okay, while we rest in awareness, I will read the description of what arises on the 8th day in the Bardo. And again, O child of noble family, listen without distraction. Although the Bardo of the peaceful deities has already appeared, you did not recognize, so you have wandered further on to here. Now on the 8th day, the blood-drinking wrathful deities will appear. Recognize them without being distracted. O child of noble family, he who is called glorious great Buddha Haruka will emerge from within your own brain and appear before you actually and clearly. His body is wine-colored, with 3 heads, 6 arms, and 4 legs spread wide apart. The right face is white, the left one red, and the center one wine-colored. His body blazes with a massive light. His 9 eyes gaze into yours with a wrathful expression. His eyebrows are like flashes of lightning. His teeth gleam like copper. He laughs aloud with shouts of ah la la and ha ha, and sends out loud whistling noises of shoo. His red gold hair flies upward blazing. His heads are crowned with dried skulls and the sun and moon. His body is garlanded with black serpents and fresh skulls. His 6 hands hold a wheel in the first hand on the right, an axe in the middle, and a sword in the last. A bell in the first on the left, a plowshare in the middle, and a skullcup in the last. His consort Buddha Krondeshvari embraces his body with her right hand clasped around his neck, and her left hand holding a skullcup full of blood to his mouth. He sends out loud palatal sounds and roaring sounds like thunder. Flames of wisdom shoot out from between the blazing Vajra hairs on his body. He stands on a throne supported by Garudas, with one pair of legs bent and the other stretched out. Do not be afraid of him. Do not be terrified. Do not be bewildered. Recognize him as the form of your own mind. He is your Yidam, so do not be afraid. He is really blessed Vairochana with his consorts, who do not fear. Recognition and liberation are simultaneous. So, that's the first of the 5 wrathful deities that one experiences in the Bardo. in the book Luminous, Emptiness, she spends a good deal of time describing his appearance, and less time on the others, because essentially there's a lot of overlap in how the wrathful deities appear. So if we understand something of the appearance, or more the meaning of the appearance actually, of the Buddha Haruka, then it's easy to understand, or it's easy to reflect on how much of the same thing applies to the other Harukas. So Haruka is sometimes translated directly as blood drinker, but as she says, really the three syllables connect with emptiness, compassion, and the unity of the two. And as we can see from this description, the wrathful deities appear in quite forceful, vivid manner. As she says, instead of being surrounded by rainbows like the peaceful deities, the Harukas are enveloped in flames, a firestorm blazing with the force of their wrathful compassion. And they laugh and howl with ear-shattering, thunderous intensity. So the whole aspect of working with images is that images are a way of speaking quite directly to us, bypassing verbal concept, and that the more we understand the meaning of the symbolism that's being displayed, the more we can understand that all of these deities really are manifesting something of the awakened, enlightened nature of mind, and that all of the symbols, as horrific as they may seem, as challenging as it may be, ultimately are expressing the quality of enlightened energy, manifesting as wrathful compassion. So, as she says, the deities have massive swollen limbs. At the same time, they're light. They're actually visualized as being made of light. So they give an impression both of solidity and strength, yet at the same time are agile and graceful. The Nyingma deities have wings, yet they remain grounded. But again, I think that's just a way of conveying to us the boundless nature of these entities. As she says, their weight and solidity are metaphors and should never be imagined as substantial, that their bodies are made of light, their empty form. Each of the wrathful, unlike the peaceful deities, each of the wrathful deities has 3 heads. I think John gave us some tankas last week that kind of depict this. But they have 3 heads or 3 faces. They have 6 arms and 4 legs. And as she says in the text, everything has a symbolic meaning that we could connect with quickly, the more we understand and recognize. So again, all of the different aspects that are a part of the visualization of the deity, the wrathful deities, or any deity, are really different aspects of enlightened mind. And that the point is to help us to connect very directly with the meaning and energy of the different symbolic representations. So, the possession of many limbs shows the multiplicity and universality of their powers. It's a sense of giving even, with 6 arms, how many things could be done. It's some deities are presented with 1,000 arms, but the idea is that again it represents the enlightened activity, the all-accomplishing activity of Buddhas. The 3 heads have several overlapping meanings. 3 heads or 3 faces represent transmuted passion, aggression, and ignorance. She says they also represent the 3 aspects of wakefulness, the kayas, the dharmakaya, complete open emptiness, possibility, the sambhogakaya, communication and connection, and the nirmanakaya, more definite form. And it's through these that, through understanding and being able to relate with the 3 kayas, that we're able to realize transmuted passion, aggression, and ignorance. To have some sense of what that means, I really recommend in the Profound Treasury book, the Mahayana text. I'm drawing a blank on the title, so let me turn around. The Bodhisattva Path of Wisdom and Compassion. Moment of panic there, but I face it. The Trungpa Rinpoche's discussion of the Lojong slogan, seeing confusion as the four kayas, the supreme shunyata protection, really gives a sense of how working with the kayas and understanding our experience of the kayas can relate to how we could work with passion, aggression, and ignorance. This is supreme shunyata protection. It's a talk unto itself, so just ask people to read it if you're interested. The three faces or three heads, she says, also represent the three gateways of liberation. One, through realization of the emptiness and openness of reality. We experience just purely by being able to really fully let go and open up in meditation practice. Through understanding that there are no characteristics by which reality can be pinned down. In other words, that nothing has its own true nature. There is no fixed nature, that everything we experience is constantly changing, that causes and conditions are constantly changing, so that everything we experience is impermanent, everything we experience is interdependent. So therefore, whatever characteristic we see in things is merely a temporary appearance, and that given enough time, everything changes. And then finally, through reaching the point, she says that the third gateway of liberation is reaching the point that transcends aspiration and effort, where there's no longer any hope or fear or success or failure. In other words, a complete letting go into simply being present without any desire for things to be different than what they are. The 6 arms, she says, represent the 6 paramitas, the perfections of generosity, discipline, patience, exertion, meditation, and prajna. In other words, the transcendent actions of the Mahayana. She says the 6 arms also represent the 5 Buddha wisdoms that we talked about in one of the previous chapters, chapter 7, I think, plus their unity as the 6th. She says that the 4 legs represent the 4 bases of miraculous ability, also called sometimes the 4 limbs of miraculous power. She seems to like to give different words to, or translate things slightly differently. But in any case, these are the 4 limbs are the renunciation of worldly aims that's combined with, first, the wish to awaken, second, firm intention or will, third, energy and perseverance, and finally, intellectual inquiry. And the idea is when these things are fully developed, when they're fully cultivated, when they fully manifest in our meditation practice and study, that this, move us right along. More traditionally, the 4 limbs are striving, intention, joyful effort, and analysis. But the idea is all of these things bring about, and ultimately lead to awakening. She says they also represent the 4 karmas, which we've talked about before, the karmas of pacifying, enriching, magnetizing, and destroying, the 4 enlightened activities of the Buddha. And that this brings liberation from the 4 modes of birth. The trampling with the legs, which is part of the presentation of the deity, that they trample on corpses or whatever, represent victory over the 4 maras. The 4 maras are, first of all, the skanda mara, our mistaken attachment to the skandhas, taken as a self, our identification and attachment to the skandhas as a real self. Klesha mara, our involvement or our attachment to the poisons of passion, aggression, and ignorance, so mistaken emotions. Yama mara, our mistaken relationship with death. Basically, a nihilistic outlook, I think, is probably the best way to put that overcomes any sense of nihilism. And Devaputra mara, which literally translates as son of the god, which is our attachment to spiritual materialism, comfort, and pleasure in a way that supports ego. The 3 eyes, and we have 3 eyes in each one of the faces, so that's why it says 9 eyes gazing at you. But 3 eyes represent the omniscience and wisdom of the Buddha. It's the unobstructed, completely clear knowledge of past, present, and future. The 4 fangs, the fangs that the Haruka has represent biting through the four maras, again, complete freedom, complete overcoming, conquering of the four maras. The deity frowns and grimaces menacingly. She says the wings represent the fulfillment of all aims. Like the peaceful deities, the wrathful deities have fivefold crowns, which again, the fivefold crowns represent the five Buddha wisdoms, but now they're set with skulls rather than jewels. And she says that the skulls represent the liberation from the five poisons, transmuted as the five wisdoms. So anger, for instance, into the mirror-like wisdom, ignorance into the all-accommodating or dharmadhatu wisdom, ratna into the wisdom of equanimity or equality, ratna being pride and hunger, basically. Passion transmuted, padma transmuted into discriminating awareness wisdom, and jealousy, envy, and paranoia transmuted into all-accomplishing action. So the fivefold crown represents the transmutation of negative emotion into these, transcendent positive qualities. As she says, the meaning of this is the poisons need not be abandoned or destroyed, but can be displayed as adornments once their energy is used correctly. And again, this relates directly to in the Vajrayana, everything is worked with it. All the everything we experience has enlightened potential. The necklace of severed heads represents complete freedom from attachment to or identification with mental events, the samskaras, what she calls the conditioning mental phenomena. The clothing of flayed skins, elephant, human, and tiger, I think, represent freedom from passion, aggression, and ignorance, as well as triumph over the three poisons, passion, aggression, and ignorance, so that rather than becoming obstacles, they become ornaments to wear. Because there's no fear of the kleshas and no attachment to the kleshas, we can use them, wear them, as adornments. And then there are different bone ornaments, and this is pretty universal with a lot of visualized deities, that there's a circular hair ornament, there are earrings, necklace, bracelets, and a bone girdle, and then an ointment made of cemetery ash. And these again represent the perfection of the paramitas, the transcendent actions: generosity, discipline, patience, exertion, meditation, and prajna, or wisdom. They stand on thrones of a lotus, sun, and moon, trampling on corpses, representing victory over ego. And again, the symbol of the lotus in particular, which we read about in the description of the thrones of the peaceful deities, really again relates to the notion of transmutation, that the lotus grows pure and beautiful out of muck and mud. And again, as with the idea that in Vajrayana, we not only need not avoid these things, we actually want to be able, we actually work directly with them. It's like Thich Nhat Hanh's slogan, no mud, no lotus, that we actually have to work with all of the things that we experience in our life, that we need not fear anything if we're able to actually see it with awareness and clarity. She says the entire manifestation of the wrathful deities is compared to a play in both senses of the word. It is the spontaneous creative expression of delight. So that's one aspect of play. It's exactly the same as, again, in the chant, to this meditator who arises in unceasing play. That we're able to recognize the true nature of our mind. We're able to rest in our fundamental awareness and open ourselves completely. Then there's boundless energy and possibility and creativity in the world, and boundless beauty in the world. And in that sense, there's play. But the other aspect of play is, as she says, is the performance of a drama taking place on the stage of the primordial ground of being. So without ever moving from the tranquility of their innermost nature, they play whatever part is necessary to awaken all beings. So that aspect of the play is what could be terrifying to us, that it's, again, wrathful compassion. Compassion that will go to great extreme, great force to wake us up. She says something about the 9 moods that, or the 9 qualities of body, speech, and mind that the Heruka presents. Great, in terms of body, that's gracefulness, showing the transmutation of passion. There's power and strength, representing the transmutation of aggression. And the wrathful, threatening gesture represents transmutation of delusion, again, to wake up. And then there's description of the moods of speech and mind as well. Happy laughter, wrathful, mocking laughter, and threatening, terrifying, thunder loud. Again, each one with greater and greater intensity to, again, bring us present, help us to wake up. And then mind, first of all, compassion toward all beings. And then secondly, outrageous, that the wrathful deities are both peaceful and wrathful as needed by beings. So angry, angry and wrathful when we stray, when we get lost, and peaceful when we're able to settle, when we're able to simply allow ourselves to be. Each of the deities is in union with wrathful ladies, in sexual union. They embrace, and the ladies, the consorts of each of the Heruka, have just one head, one face, but they also have 3 eyes and fierce expressions. But as she says in the text, but otherwise they have normal physical forms, except that their colors are quite different from, they're quite colorful. But the single face represents the equality of all phenomena and ultimate truth. It's the equality of all things in emptiness, the equality of all things in nothing having its own inherent true nature. The 2 arms represent wisdom and skillful means, which go together in enlightened activity. As she says, they leap into the embrace of the Herukas with ecstatic abandon, and the whole attitude of both partners radiates the fierce enjoyment of their bliss. So this is not simply sexual union, although that's represented clearly but it's bliss, complete bliss that has no single, that it's just self-existing bliss. I guess that's the best way to put it. Actually, that's and again, it's also a sense of complete freedom, complete openness, complete appreciation of all aspects of life. The deities are naked aside from the leopard, from the skins. The ladies also have the crown of skulls, because they also manifest as the 5 wisdoms. And they have 5 of the 6 bone ornaments, but the cemetery ash is omitted because they themselves are the embodiment of wisdom. So having described all of that, the important thing to realize is that the Buddha Heruka, in his most fearsome, powerful, wrathful, terrifying form, is none other than, and the wrathful lady who accompanies him, are the transformations of Vairocana and Akasha.Vishvari, who also have already appeared as peaceful deities, that they're exactly the same. But here they're exactly the same in essence. But here they represent in furious form the transmutation of the energy that lies behind ignorance and self-delusion. This is the energy of the all-encompassing knowledge of reality, Dharmadhatu wisdom, which again talked about in the previous chapter on the 5 wisdoms. But the dominant characteristic of the Dharmadhatu wisdom is a wide awake openness, an all-embracing, all-accommodating awareness that shines out like the sun in every direction. And the question is, for us, do we sometimes have glimpses of this? Do we sometimes have an experience of something like this? Of just awareness that shines forth in all directions. An awareness that, again, can accommodate anything and everything that we experience. It's a calm, peaceful serenity flowing naturally from its centered yet limitless nature. So it's not localized in any one place. It's just complete openness. It's not scattered. It's not diffused. It's not unbalanced. This is just some of the description of the Dharmadhatu wisdom that she provided in chapter 7. To continue with understanding something of the symbolism of the Harukas, they all hold different implements in their 6 arms, and the ladies hold implements as well in their 2 arms. So in this case, the whatever object is in the first right hand for each Haruka is the symbol of that particular family. So in this case, in the first right hand, it's a wheel, which symbolizes the Dharmadhatu wisdom, the all-accommodating wisdom, transmuted ignorance, Buddha family in terms of the 5 families. And again, she says the Dharma wheel has 8 spokes that represents the 8 directions, the cardinal directions, as well as the intermediate directions, which again is the idea of awareness in all directions, awareness of everything, awareness that's all accommodating. And it also represents the Eightfold Path, which brings us to ultimately enlightenment and the Dharmadhatu wisdom. He also holds in his first left hand a bell signifying emptiness. This will be, I think, all the Harukas, I think, hold bells signifying emptiness. And one way perhaps of understanding something of that is to think of the nature of sound and the impermanence of sound, and how sound can pervade an entire space and yet fade away, that's some experience of emptiness, that it's there, but then it isn't, and I can explain it better than that. It also holds an axe, a sword, a plowshare, and a skull cup. So the axe represents cutting down the tree of worldly existence, our attachment to any kind of worldly fetter, any kind of worldly obscuration or obstruction. The plowshare, she says, represents rooting out the causes of suffering and also prevents the sowing of karmic seeds. So again, there's a clearing, a cleansing, a cutting through. The sword destroys the 5 poisons, cutting through. It also represents prajna, it's prajna that sees both the emptiness of self, the lack of identity, lack of true identity in oneself, as well as the emptiness or egolessness of other, egolessness of phenomena. The skull cup represents wisdom, and in that it holds the blood of Mara transformed into the elixir of knowledge. This particular deity is maroon in color, or as it said in the text, wine-colored. And the wrathful lady who appears with this Haruka is the same but of a lighter shade. And she holds a wheel in her right hand, and in the left a skull cup of human blood, again representing the offering of attachment, any attachment to samsara, the freedom from any attachment to samsara, to wakefulness. So again, she reminds us that they are the expression of our own true nature, the irresistible explosion of our unrecognized potential for destroying all limitations and cutting through all obstacles to awakening. And the instruction again and again is always to recognize them if we have some experience in deity practice, visualization practice, we could recognize them as our own chosen deity, who's none other than our own Buddha nature, our awakened state of supreme awareness. But in terms of ordinary life, the more we can deepen and stabilize our awareness in meditation, the greater chance we have of connecting to that awareness in any situation, no matter how disturbing it may be. So again, through meditation practice, developing our ability to stay in awareness and just simply see things as they are. And again, as it is with every step in the bardo, if we recognize, then we become liberated. But if we don't recognize the first Haruka and we try to run away through fear and panic, then another form will immediately appear out of the bardo. So this brings us to day 9. And the rest of this goes fairly quickly because much of the description of the symbolism is the same for each Haruka. But again, becoming some familiar with it helps us to recognize when we see it, or when we see something like that. So the Buddha Haruka appears from the center of the brain. The pattern is exactly the same as it was with the peaceful deities. First we encounter the Buddha family, then we encounter the Vajra in the east. So in this case, it's the Vajra Haruka who appears from the eastern quarter of the brain. That would be basically the front. East is always in front. This Haruka is dark blue, has three faces that are white, blue, and red. The middle face is always the color of the particular particular family. Also has 6 hands, but in this case holds a Vajra in the first right hand. Again, the Vajra is a symbol of the Vajra family. Holds a skull cup and axe, a bell, skull cup, and plowshare. So again, the symbol of the family that's held in the first right hand represents the male principle and stands for that family's skillful means, the special way that the family manifests their compassion. And this is true in all kinds of practices. That the Buddha family will be symbolized by a wheel. Vajra family will be symbolized by a Vajra. The Ratna family by a jewel, particularly a wish-fulfilling jewel. Padma by a lotus. And karma usually with a sword, although she also talks about it sometimes being symbolized by a double Vajra, a crossed Vajra. In any case, the Vajra Haruka, when we recognize, represents the transmutation of aggression, anger, and hatred into the tremendous, as she says, the tremendous wrathful force of the awakened state. And that the diamond-sharp clarity that destroys undercurrents of negativity, dislike, resentment, that cloud our awareness, and reveals the brilliant mirror knowledge. So this is, in its transmuted form, anger, aggression, and hatred, the mirror-like wisdom, which is just simply like a mirror, reflects everything accurately, clearly, without distortion, so that there's, again, a perfect clarity, perfect, crystal clear, diamond-like clarity to things. On day 10, we experience the Ratna Haruka, which comes from the southern quarter of the brain. This would be on, I guess, on the right side. It's typically associated with south. So, this, like the other Harukas, also has 3 faces. White, the middle face is dark yellow, which is also the color of this particular Haruka's body. And then a red face. In the first right hand holds the symbol of the family, which again is a jewel. This Haruka holds a couple of implements that she did not describe before, the tantric staff or kadvanga, and the club, and the trident. And is accompanied by the Ratna wrathful lady. So again, this Haruka represents the liberated or transmuted energy of pride and arrogance. And she says this energy radiates forth like a blazing golden jewel, breaking down the barriers that blind us to the equalizing knowledge and the Buddha nature and everything around us. This is the wisdom of equality or equanimity. The wisdom that appreciates the richness that's already there in any experience, any phenomena, any possibility. And it's the richness of the true nature of our minds. The trident, she says, symbolizes the 3 jewels of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. There are all kinds of 3s, but in particular that it also represents, again, overcoming the 3 poisons of passion, aggression, and delusion. It also represents the 3 kayas, Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nirmanakaya. And it also represents the Vajra, body, speech, and mind. The Kadvanga is the staff that has 3 heads on it. One is a dry skull that represents the Dharmakaya. The second is a decaying head that represents the Sambhogakaya. And then a freshly severed head that represents the Nirmanakaya. It has it's 8-sided, representing again the Eightfold Path. And it has a double Vajra at the top. So this can represent, again, the 3 kayas. It can also represent the nadis and chakras, the inner channels of the body, and the energy centers in the body. And as she says, when it's held by a single figure in the left arm, it represents the consort in a hidden way. So you might have, rather than seeing a deity in union with another deity, you just see the deity, but holding the staff, the kadvanga. And that represents the consort, even though they're not present in that particular tanka or in that particular visualization. When it's held in the right hand, as it is in this particular Haruka, it symbolizes skillful means. Then we come to day 11, which is the last day that we'll be talking about tonight, because we're saving day 12, which is a tremendous explosion of wrathful energy, for next week. But day 11 is the Padma Haruka, which appears from the western quarter. Again, three faces: white, middle face, dark red, as is the body, dark red, and then a blue face on the right. In the first right hand holds the symbol of the Padma family, which is the lotus. Also holds a tantric staff or khatvanga, holds a rod, and in the left hand again a bell symbolizing emptiness, the skull cup filled with blood representing transmutation of kleshas and skandhas, and a small drum. Again, the lotus represents really the beauty and purity arising from muck and mud. It's the same symbol that we've talked about before. And in this case in particular represents transmuting passion, grasping, greed into compassion. Or she says, into the compassion and love of the investigative knowledge, or what Trungpa Rinpoche called the discriminating awareness wisdom. Something to be said about appreciating the energy of beauty and the power in aesthetics. But the discriminating awareness wisdom, if the Ratna energy represents the knowledge of equality, that all things are one in being empty in nature, the discriminating awareness wisdom is the ability to see the variety of appearances and be absolutely clear about the variety of appearances without getting caught up in characteristics. Without getting caught up in any particular judgment, but just accurate, clear perception that discriminates. So that brings us to the end of what I'm going to be talking about tonight. As I said, next week we'll read the final third of this chapter, because again, in the day 12, with the appearance of the Karma Haruka, the one family that we haven't talked about yet, the one wrathful deity we haven't talked about yet, there is a tremendous explosion of wrathful energy in the form of all kinds of dakinis who present in all kinds of very vivid, colorful, and horrifying, from one point of view, ways. So that it's, again, the last attempt of the awakened mind to wake us up before we enter the bardo of becoming, or she calls the bardo of existence, where we begin to look for a body and become even more solid in our holding to our habitual patterns. But in any case, that's what I am set to talk about tonight. We have some time for discussion, questions, reactions, whatever.
I have a question. So, while you're describing vivid, very interesting descriptions of the Harukas, and it occurs to me that to see these symbols or visualizations that are present, for instance, in Egyptian lore. I've also heard there's the Egyptian book of the dead. So it just seems to me that it crosses cultural and spiritual boundaries, even Judeo-Christian, Egyptian, other, it echoes to me. That's all. What do you think?
Well, that was something I thought about talking about tonight and decided that it didn't. It was as I was doing, some reading and preparation. I was reminded that Carl Jung was fascinated with the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and actually said that got a lot of his ideas from the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which he saw as really a psychological text in the sense that it related to mind, which it does, and that he some of his ideas about archetypes, which again appear in different cultures in different forms, but that some of that, he says, came out of his reading and understanding of the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which he said he carried with him all the time. So I think there's something to that. I mean, in the Japanese tradition, there are wrathful guardian deities of all kinds. Even in the Theravadan tradition, there's some, scary-looking kinds of entities. They're nothing quite as the Tibetans, I think, really.
But Carl Jung was just he was completely fixed on the Egyptian version of the Tibetan Book of the Dead. He had no familiarity with the Tibetan Book of the Dead, Tibetan Book of the Dead.
He read Evan Wentz's translation. It's
Evans Wentz translated the Tibetan and borrowed the title
yes.
from the Egyptian because it helped it sell.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never known that Carl Jung had any real familiarity with the Tibetan teachings.
He was quite clear that he had read the Bardo Totral and considered it a beautiful text. He says I don't know. I've not studied Carl Jung very extensively. Sometimes there's interesting ideas there, but
Okay.
I think also, as with many other people, a lot of material was not translated very well. And I think you get a sense, even from reading this book, that translation from Sanskrit and Tibetan into English is still very much a fluid situation, and that different translators will give different names to the same original term to try to get at one quality or connotation of another. And sometimes, in my personal experience, sometimes that's really helpful because you kind of get a sense by hearing two or some different ideas what they're trying to point to. Because every word is just a pointing, like a pointing to the moon. And then sometimes it gets frustrating because you get thinking, am I hearing something different, or is this the same thing that the other person was talking about? But it's translation is. Historically, the transmission of Buddhism from India to Tibet, there was a lot of work put into translating Sanskrit terms into Tibetan terms that they felt best conveyed the meaning of, whatever that term represented. And I think, it's still happening really in terms of translating these texts into English. And yeah, Carl Jung, that was many, many years ago. And I think the quality of translation and, the mixing of, particularly the mixing of theism with a non-theistic religion, that really can make some of those things, really confusing, I think. Oh yeah, the idea of the archetype is that they're universal human experiences. The particular forms will be somewhat different, but the underlying meaning or the underlying essence is the same. The other thought that I had in preparing for tonight, there are, in terms of just the notion of intensity in the Bardo, there were different practices that Trungpa Rinpoche introduced that really relate directly with intensity. One was Maitri space awareness practice, and the other was Mudra space awareness. And in different ways, they both work with really allowing us to experience the intensity. With the Maitri rooms, it's the intensity of the different Buddha families. And with Mudra space awareness, it's literally experiencing intensity with space itself. And they're interesting, very interesting practices to do, because essentially it really does come back to being able to rest in awareness and just seeing what arises in mind without getting swayed by it, overwhelmed by it. And again, that's what we're asked to do in the Bardo, as in daily life. Well, I guess we could close now if there's we'll have discussion group tomorrow night for those people who can come and want to come. Again, it's right after meditation at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. And I guess we should close with the dedication of merit. By this merit, may all obtain omniscience, may it defeat the enemy wrongdoing, from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great East, may the lotus garden of the Rigdon's wisdom bloom, may the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled, may all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory. Thank you, everyone, and good night.
Michael?
Michael.
Thank you.
Michael.
Michael.
Thank you, Michael.
Buddy.
Michael, really,
Night.
Thank you.
wow.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.